Well, South Africa is not invited to the upcoming G20 Sherpas meeting that will take place in Washington on the 15th and the 16th of this month. South Africa's exclusion from the first US-hosted Sherpas meeting is not unexpected. Pretoria was anticipating some hostility after the United States took over the G20 presidency on the 1st of December. South Africa is now expected to work more towards the 2027 summit, which will then be hosted by the United Kingdom. The United States will host the G20 Leaders Summit after its midterm elections late next year. The outcome of that election is likely to dominate the news cycle and possibly overshadow the G20 program.
I think South Africa will continue to indicate its willingness to participate as a founding member, because this is not a favor. South Africa was not invited to join the group, but South Africa is a founding member. Secondly, South Africa will have to engage some members of the G20 to indicate to them the posture of the United States of America. And therefore, these negotiations and statements will continue. We expect South Africa to speak to this issue. It might not be a lengthy statement because the president has spoken already in terms of South Africa's position on Sunday when he was addressing the nation, willingness to continue to participate and continue to handle issues on a good and a mature manner as a country that is willing to build relationship and not descend to anarchy, or perhaps be a country that is fighting another country, but it will affirm its authority in terms of the constitution of the country, the autonomy of the country, but also indicating the role of South Africa in the formation of this forum, because South Africa was there from inception. South Africa has been there, and many countries are fully aware.
Let's take this up now with Dr. Oscar van Heerden. He is an international relations expert from the Center for African Diplomacy and Leadership at the University of Johannesburg. Good to have you on the SABC as always, sir. So this exclusion that Washington apparently wants to enforce against South Africa for the upcoming Sherpas meeting in mid-December, is that something that, as chairperson of the G20 for the upcoming year, that Washington is actually empowered to do?
They're not empowered to do it, Timikile, but they've done it. We know what to expect from the Trump administration. This comes as no surprise. They obviously have to be seen to be consistent. They said South Africa is not invited to the G20 Leaders Summit. And as you know, processes already start a year in advance. So it's no surprise that the minister has not been invited to the first Sherpas meeting. I think the issue here, Timikile, is what is the other G20 members going to do about this?
What can they do realistically when you consider that many of them have relationships with the United States that have endured for many tens of years, and others are in fact trying to forge closer ties, be it on trade or other issues?
Well, we've seen what they are able to do. Remember, Trump called for a boycott. He said he's not coming to the G20, and he had expected, precisely for the sentiments that you have just raised, that some of his allies were going to follow suit, and they decided not to. So that was a clear stand, a clear message to Trump and to his administration. They don't agree with the boycott. They all came in attendance in Johannesburg. And I think that that kind of solidarity, I would be surprised if there's nothing going to happen over the next few days. Obviously, South Africa is going to want to call some of its allies, particularly its BRICS partners, to say, what are you doing about this? And also, in addition to that, might even make some phone calls to some of the European countries. As you know, the Chancellor of Germany was very supportive and came out very clear about the fact that they do not support the fact that Trump does not want to invite South Africa. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's going to yet again be a rally around multilateralism. And some countries, of course not all, but some key countries are going to say, if South Africa is not going to be there, then we are also not coming.
But there also hasn't been a groundswell of condemnation of the way in which the Trump administration has treated South Africa, especially around the G20 program in the last few weeks, right? So if it comes to it, do you honestly think that the majority of G20 members would go as far as saying, well, we're not sending our Sherpa to the meeting if the South Africans are not in the room with us?
Perhaps not the majority, Tembekile, but I think some are going to go to wherever the venue is in the United States and is going to use the opportunity to say, we are not happy about this. We come with a message from our leaders that it cannot continue like this, and so on and so forth. The pressure will be brought to bear from various angles and in various different ways. And I do think that the State Department is going to try and is going to see reason, and hopefully it's not going to continue.
And is there a unique responsibility to speak up, if I can phrase it in that way, for the African Union or African states who Donald Trump also, as American president, would want some sort of conversations with at this moment?
Look, I mean, I think that we need to look beyond about the fact that this is about South Africa. We know the attitude that Trump has personally, as well as his administration, towards Africa and towards African countries and African leaders. He has expressed himself in so many colorful ways, what he thinks about us. I don't want to speak about the African Union, but I do think the presidency under the Angola and others will have to think very, very clearly about what is it that they want to do to demonstrate support for South Africa, because as has been said, on a number of occasions, South Africa wasn't just invited in, South Africa is a founding member.
And as far as breakdowns go, Dr. van Heerden, in diplomatic relations go, if you were to rate the current situation between Washington and Pretoria, what's left of this relationship on a scale of 1 to 10?
Well, I mean, on a scale of 1 to 10, very little. You know, we are still trying to get a trade deal out of the Americans. They've slapped us with 30% tariffs. They've not acknowledged and received or accepted our candidates as a US ambassador. I don't know how far President Ramaphosa wants to take it, but I don't agree with this continuous notion that we must try and appease. You know, if you know who you are dealing with, the person is not interested in appeasement. I think that the attitude is correct to say we are tired. We are looking at 2027 with the UK presidency. And as far as markets go, we are looking elsewhere, and we are going to be committed within the BRICS formation, which is a multilateral formation.
Interesting that you say that South Africa should not be in a cycle where it constantly seeks to appease Washington, because in this statement with the address to the nation on Sunday, President Ramaphosa made it clear that the door to constructive dialogue remained open. I'm not sure if there's a knock on the other side of that door, ultimately, or if South Africa's knock will be answered in the coming days or weeks. But ultimately, is there room here for a G20 member state or states to mediate in this relationship? And if so, what would the T's and C's, the terms and conditions, be in order for, if not a friendly relationship, some level of coexistence between these two countries until, let's say, the end of the Trump term? Yeah,
to the analogy, we are knocking, and not only are they not answering to Mbekile, they are telling us to get away. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that this is exactly what Trump wants. This is the game that he's playing. He wants mediators to come, whether it is Keir Starmer from the UK, because he's part of the Troika and the next presidency, whether it is European leaders or Xi Jinping. He wants someone to come to him and beg him to bring South Africa in. And then he's going to say what we cannot compromise on. They must drop the case against Israel if they want acceptance. They must not have relations with Iran and Russia. They must review their BEE legislation and their racist policies, and they must stop a white genocide. All things that we are not prepared to do. And some of them even premised on lies. So, you know, even if there's going to be mediation, Trump is going to double down. He's going to make demands that we are not going to be prepared to meet. So I really think the time of the United States is over.
And how do you think...
There's no strategic...
Very briefly,
no
so how do you think history will then remember... My apologies. How do you think history will then remember the current South African administration, precisely on the point that you were making, refusing to bow to the bigger issues that ultimately the White House has with the current government, especially on the international stage, including the ICJ case?
I think the Secretary General of the United Nations summed it up very nicely when he was asked by Sherwin Bryce Pease at the G20 summit about the spat between South Africa and the US. And he said the conduct and the diplomatic engagement from the South Africans, from President Ramaphosa and his team, has been nothing short of mature, with dignity and respect. And that's how people are going to remember this era. An intransigent, childish, schizophrenic president in the Oval Office who wants to bully everyone. And Ramaphosa, a lonely South African president, took him up to the task because he did not want to realize, Trump and his ilk doesn't want to realize that the United States' time is over. The time of lecturing us and giving us diktats instead of having bilateral discussions is over.
Thank you very much for that. Dr. Oscar van Heerden, international relations expert from the Center for African Diplomacy and Leadership with the University of Johannesburg. Always a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you.